In this course, we will learn how to manage your environment. We will see how the licensing system works in Heflow. We'll learn how to invite users into your environment, and how to create and associate roles with those users to give them access to certain features and a limited list of processes. We will do some practical cases to show the interest of user roles. In the first part, we will talk about license control. To access the license control, you must click on this menu icon, and then you must access the subscriptions part. A subscription is a set of licenses that you have purchased from Heflow. You will see several pieces of information on this screen. The first information is the start date of this subscription and the end date. If there is no end date, it means that you have a corporate contract with Heflow. This end date is then defined in this contract. If you see an end date, then you purchased your subscription through another type of automatic channel. First, we are going to talk about the three types of license in Heflow. The first and simplest is named user. These are licenses for specific people. I'm going to give a license to Carol Parker. From then on, whenever Carol Parker needs to log into Heflow, she will be able to access it normally, because she has this type of license. It is therefore a license that must be assigned to a specific user. This type of license is used for administrators, process analysts, and executors. You will learn more about process instance runners in the automation course. The objective of this license is to guarantee an available connection each time the user connects. The second easiest license is portal viewers. This type of license gives access only to the portal screen. This type of user will only access this functionality, where he will consult the documentation of the processes, the matrix of responsibilities. He will also be able to initiate work items via this tool, and he will be able to consult their progress. With this license, you give limited access to the tool to your user. The difference with a typical user is that the portal viewer does not run a process once initiated. He therefore has the possibility of creating a work item via the portal. But then, if he must participate in the execution of it, you must classify this user as an executor user, and therefore change the type of license. It will then be necessary to give him access with a nominative license, or a concurrent license that we will see just after. You will see this in more detail in the automation course. This license makes it possible to have a larger number of users but with stronger restrictions of use. The purpose of this license is to provide access to the process portal for users who only need to consult the process documentation or create process instances without being able to act in their execution. The third form of license concerns concurrent users. What is the idea of this type of license? Heflow makes it possible to provide a certain number of available connections for users who share this type of access. To give you an idea, let's say a concurrent type user has just logged into the system. So out of the 5 connections, only 4 are available. Then a second and a third also just entered the system. You then have 2 connections available. If a 4th and a 5th user connect, the 5th will be able to connect normally. However, if a 6th user with this type of license tries to connect, then the system will display a message warning him that all connections are busy and that he will have to log in at another time. For your information, concurrent user type licenses are only used for process executors. You must therefore use Heflow to automate your processes to be able to acquire this type of license. We invite you to contact our sales team if you wish to have more information on this subject. It is therefore up to you to see, depending on your organization, how to assign these licenses to your different users. It is important to give named licenses to your administrator or process analyst type users because they will need access to the process editor. When you buy new licenses or add them to your contract, they are then generated here in this environment and are visible on this screen. Our subscriptions are contained in a single environment. An environment is like an installation that contains the processes we create, our work items, our users, and other information. I imagine there are other systems in your company. You may have access to test and production environments. In HeFlow you can have the same. You can have access to different environments. During this training we only use one environment, but a user who has a named license can also create and access other environments. When I click here, you can see that I have access to this set of environments. Additionally, you can create other environments if you click this command. You can create, for instance, a test environment, so I'm going to click on, create a new environment, and I'm going to give it a name. Once done, only you can access this other environment. As you can see, by installing this other environment, we don't have the different processes that we have in the other environment. This is also the case for licenses. A new environment is like a new installation of HeFlow. If you need to have a test environment for your business, you should know that licenses are associated with an environment. If one of your users with an administrator role creates a new environment, and that user has a named license, then the system will take the same license for both environments. On the other hand, this user will not be able to invite users to this test environment who have a license of the concurrent or portal viewer type, because these licenses are only associated with the original environment. I will now return to our initial environment, so that we can see other important information about the environment. Whenever I need to manage my environment, I can go here in the environment selector and click on this command, Manage Environment. Another way to get there is through the main menu itself. You can access environment management by clicking on this item. You have the possibility to change the color of the selector. This is the color that represents this environment in the environment selector we saw earlier. As you can see, the icon that represents our environment has a green color. We can change this color. I'm going to choose red. And as you can see, our environment icon color is now red. Do not confuse the color of the environment selector with the theme color of your environment. You can change the theme color in this part. There are several themes. The default one is orange. You can put in blue. You can choose the red color. You can choose to put in green. As we saw in another video, there is the option to choose dark mode in your settings. This mode adapts to the chosen theme. In our case, we will choose the default theme, which is orange. And I will return to the light mode. You can also find in this screen the name of your environment. This is the name you can see at the top right of your screen. You have the option to modify it. I will change the name of the environment. You must click on Save to save the modification. As you can see, the name change has been taken into account. In our case, we are going to redefine the name by putting the original one. You also have the possibility to personalize your environment by adding your company logo. The chosen logo will replace the Heflo logo visible at the top left. In addition to that, this new logo will appear on the PDF documentation cover page of your processes. You must click on this element to add your logo. You must choose an image file, either PNG or JPEG. We advise you to choose an image with a transparent background because the place on which the logo will be positioned has a gray background color. So I will choose the logo for this environment. Our logo has now replaced the Heflo logo on the top left. You also have the option of customizing your browser's tab logo. I will remove the full screen view to show you my browser. The tab that contains the Heflo page is marked with the Heflo icon by default. You then have the option to customize this. You must then click on this element and choose an ICO type file. From then on, we can see in the browser the icon that we have associated with our Heflo environment. I will return to full screen. You also have the possibility to configure the options available in the portal. By default, Heflo gives access to these 4 options, as we saw in one of our previous videos. The user accessing this screen can then view process documentation, view your organization's RACI matrix, create a work item, and view the work items he has created. You can adapt the options available on this screen to suit your needs. We will do some examples. If you want the portal to be used only for process automation, then you can make these 2 options available. From then on, the user accessing this screen will only see these 2 options. If you want the portal to be used only to view your organization's process documentation and RACI matrix, then you can choose these 2 options. As you can see, the portal then gives the possibility to access only these 2 options. There is also the option to set a single option. For example, you can choose to provide access only to process documentation. It is then necessary to select only the first option. Heflo will behave differently in this case. Indeed, if we click on the portal, the system then directly displays the home page of the process documentation. If you have set a process landscape as your home page, then you will be able to access it directly. We are going to return to the environment management screen and set the default settings which give access to the 4 options on the portal. In this part, you have the option of associating a time zone with your environment. This is important information if you are automating your processes. The time zone has a special importance regarding deadlines and calendars. You have this information available in this part. We will study deadlines and calendars in our automation training. HeFlow has a feature that allows your users to authenticate from your SSO. This is a separately sold feature. Authentication with your SSO involves an exchange with your infrastructure. The purpose of this setting is to allow your users to be redirected to your SSO when they attempt to connect to HeFlow, so that they authenticate with your SSO. Your system will then send the necessary information back to HeFlow. The basic information is the name of the user and the email of this one. We invite you to contact our sales team if you want more information about this feature. When you are in contact with our support team, it will sometimes be necessary to give us the ID of your environment. This information will allow the team to identify your environment and facilitate support. You can obtain this information by clicking on Copy Identifier. From then on, your environment ID will be visible in the bottom right, and it will be automatically copied, and you can then paste it into an email or in our chat tool. We have in this area the most dangerous commands. The most dangerous is Remove Environment. When I click on this command, it deletes all information related to this environment. It removes processes, users, and other information. You must then choose the environment to which you wish to be redirected. This is a command that requires careful use. If you have created an environment for testing, and it has become useless, you can then use this command, but be careful when performing this action. I advise you to avoid this type of action, or to perform it with great care. You can also contact us if you want our help on this matter. You also have the option of deleting all work items associated with this environment. This can be useful if you want to do tests in production, and delete them when they are finalized. This will allow you to start from scratch when your users start creating work items. For data security reasons, validation of this deletion by Venki may be necessary if the number of work items is high. In the Users and Authorization part, we configure the accesses of our users. In this first tab, Users, we can see the different users who have access to this environment. We can also create users by clicking plus. On this screen we can change the roles associated with a user. We can also assign licenses. We can also block or remove users. It is also possible to reset a user's password. In the Roles tab, you create and manage access profiles in HeFlow. A role gives access to features and pages of HeFlow. In the User Sessions tab, you can manage current user connections. You can see the users who are now connected to this HeFlow environment. You can disconnect a user's session by clicking this icon. At that time, that user's browser will return to the login screen. You can use this screen to help manage concurrent sessions. In the Logs tab, you can view the security and connection logs of users in your environment. You have to choose a date, and you can choose a specific user. Let's go back to the Role tab. What is an access profile or role in HeFlow? It is a set of permissions on pages and features. We will click on the plus button to create a role. On this screen, we can authorize the people who will be associated with this role to access certain pages and functionalities of HeFlow. You have the ability to determine which features are allowed per process. As you can see, these authorizations are spread over the three main screens of HeFlow. You have Process Editor, Process Portal, and Work Items. You can hover your mouse over the different elements to understand what action they are associated with. We are going to present the different possible actions. First of all, we will see the Process Editor. This option is used to authorize the editing of one or more processes. This gives the right to publish the documentation or automation of one or more processes. The third option allows you to deactivate the publication of documentation or automation of one or more processes. We will now see the different possible actions for the Process Portal. This option allows access to the documentation of one or more processes on the portal. You have the ability to see the progress of work items created by users in the same department. This option gives the possibility to download the documentation of the process. And this one to download the attachments associated with the documentation of the process or a BPMN element. This option gives the right to write comments in the Process Portal. The last option is to allow the creation of work items from the portal. Finally, we'll introduce actions for work items. You will learn more about work items in the automation training. You can provide access to work items for one or more processes. This option allows editing of work items. You authorize the creation of work items. This option provides the ability to change the responsibles for a work item. This allows the cancellation of a work item. And this allows you to reopen a completed work item. This option allows you to suspend the deadlines of one or more processes. This suspension may also be made on the deadline of the tasks in progress. The last option gives the option to update the process version of the work item or even change the work item process. In our case, we want to create a role for purchasers. We want them to only be able to see process documentation for purchase of material goods and services, supplier's registration, and goods receiving. We will also allow downloading of documentation and attachments for these processes. We are therefore going to select these different actions for the processes concerned. We will not allow comments. Later in the video, we'll create a purchaser coordinator role, which will provide the ability to write comments on the portal. We are going to click on Confirm. On this page you can choose the screens and features that will be accessible by users who will have this role. You can grant access to the portal by choosing this option. You can give access only to the portal by choosing this one. You will then have a role similar to the portal-only native role that we will present later in the video, but with the possibility of selecting processes. You can give access to the process editor for all processes by selecting this option, or you can limit the list of processes to edit by selecting them in the Select Processes section. You can also give users of this role the ability to create processes. The associated user will then have a profile very similar to that of the administrator, but he will not be a system administrator. He will not have access to environment and system management. The workspace authorization part will be seen in more detail in the automation training. For information, the roles that only give access to the process portal will be automatically associated with a portal viewer's license type. Roles that provide access to the process editor require a named license. Roles that provide access to the workspace require a named or concurrent license. We are going to create a role. We'll call it Purchasers. I want this role to give access only to the process portal. I don't want users with this role to be able to access the workspace nor the process editor. I want users in this role to only be able to view and download process documentation related to the supply chain. I also want them to be able to download attachments from these processes. I don't want them to be able to write comments. We are going to create another role that will allow users to write comments. This role only grants access to the portal for the processes concerning goods receiving, purchase of material goods and services, and suppliers registration. If you have SSO integration in your contract, then it is possible to associate a group from your SSO to a HEFLO role. Authentication via this method allows the user who is connected to your SSO to connect directly to your HEFLO environment. The system will then be able to retrieve the information of the user concerned. For example, if you want to connect the purchaser's role with a group of your SSO purchasers, then you just need to enter the name of the SSO group in this location. In our case, we will put AD purchasers, assuming that the group name in the SSO is AD purchasers. From then on, if your user is a new user at HEFLO, and he connects via your SSO, your system will send the necessary information for his connection, the user's email, his name and his role. If you match the group name of your SSO with a role in HEFLO, then the user will automatically be associated with this access profile. He will automatically be able to have the permissions defined in this role. Updates made to a role will be automatically taken into account when the user logs in. You can also add users here. We will see later in this video how to associate a role with a user. You also have the option to remove users or groups from your SSO associated with this role. In our case, we are going to remove the association with the AD purchasers group. You also have the option of requiring users associated with this role to use two-factor authentication when logging into HEFLO. They will then have to log in with their password and authentication with an application such as Google Authenticator or Authy. We are going to select the Portal Only option because we want to give access only to the portal screen for the selected processes. We will click on Confirm. We just created a role called Purchasers. HEFLO natively has 3 roles. The Administrator role, the Portal Only role, and the User role. They follow different logics that I mentioned earlier regarding access to pages and features. An administrator user has full powers. He has access to all the processes, to all the work items, he has access to the management of the environment. He has all the rights in the environment. Each time a new environment is created in HEFLO, the system automatically creates these 3 roles. Native roles do not allow certain modifications. As the name suggests, the portal-only role grants access only to the functionality of the process portal. This role allows the user to view process documentation and the company's RACI matrix. It also allows the associated user to create work items on the portal and view their progress. This role is linked to the portal viewer's license. You can also create your custom role, leaving only access to the portal with a process selection. This is the logic we followed with the creation of the purchaser's role. The user role gives access to the workspace and the portal. This role also gives access to a home page. You will see the concept of the home page and this role in more detail in the process automation training. We will have the opportunity to return to the role when we will do case studies at the end of this course. In the Users tab, we have the list of all users who access this HeFlow environment. As we said before, you have the possibility to create users, modify or delete existing users. A user's access consists of three parts. The first part is identification with email and name information. The email is the user's login, it is also the identification key of a user on HeFlow. In the role part, which is the second part, you can associate the roles of this user. You can put several. HeFlow will add the roles and give access to all the pages and functionalities of the different roles of the user. As we saw earlier, the administrator role has all permissions and can access all pages, so there is no point in adding an additional role. There are interesting cases regarding the accumulation of roles. For example, if you put the user native role and a created role of process editor type on a selection of processes, then HeFlow will accumulate the two roles and give access to both the pages and functionalities of the user role and the pages and functionalities of the process editor custom role. We will make an example in our case studies to illustrate this point. The third part concerns the access control of this user. In the case of Douglas Miller, he has a named license. I remind you that it is important to guarantee the access of your administrator users, so you must associate a named license for this type of user. As mentioned earlier, users with roles that grant access to the process editor must have a named license. This is the case, for example, of users with the administrator role. Those with roles that give at least access to the workspace, but no access to the process editor must have a named or concurrent license. For example, this is the case with the user role. Finally, users who have a role that only gives access to the portal screen must have a portal viewer's license. This is the case for users who have the portal-only role. In our case, I want Douglas Miller to be an administrator, therefore I choose a named license. I want to guarantee him permanent access to HeFlow. There are two methods to invite a user to your environment. One of two methods is performed on this screen. The plus button is used to create a user in this environment. We will click on the plus button. We must then provide the various necessary information, the email, the name, the role or roles and the type of license. For our example, I will create the user, Daniel Scott. If the email address entered corresponds to a user who already has a HeFlow account, the user's name is then filled in automatically. I want him to only have access to the portal to see all of the process documentation. We are therefore going to choose the portal-only role. We can now click on Confirm to validate this creation. Daniel Scott now appears in the list of users. something interesting is happening. When you choose a role that gives access only to the portal. This can be a created role or the portal-only native role. The system will then automatically assign a portal viewer's license to this user from among the licenses of this type available. After that, the system does not display the information about this license in the user information. In this case, no email will be sent automatically by Heflow. If this user already has a Heflow account with a login and a password, it will then simply be necessary to warn this user to tell him that he now has access to this environment. In our case, Daniel Scott already has a Heflow account. The next time he connects to Heflow, he will be able to see this new environment in his environment selector at the top right, and he can access it by clicking on the icon. On the other hand, if it is a user who does not yet have a Heflow account, you must define a temporary password for him. To define a password, click on this icon. Once the password has been defined, you can then send an email to the user with his login, which is his email address, and the temporary password. The user will then be able to connect to Heflow and will be automatically directed to this environment. He can change the temporary password by clicking on My Account. The other method is to send invitations by email. You must click on this icon at the top of the screen to be able to invite one or more users to your environment. You must choose the role that will be associated with the desired user or users. You have all the existing roles in your environment. This feature is useful if you want to invite multiple people with the same role. For example, it is interesting to use this method to invite users with the portal-only role. We are going to choose the role, Purchasers. We are now going to write the email address of the user concerned. We can click on Send Invitation. From then on, Heflow emailed John with a link to access this environment. John already appears in the list of users, but with different information. Indeed, as long as the user has not accepted the invitation sent by email, it is pending. You can't edit information about him, such as assigning a license or changing roles. You will be able to do this only after he clicks on the invitation link and enters this environment. John Williams clicked on the link to join this environment. We can then edit this user and see the information about him. We find his name, his email, the purchaser's role. We do not see an associated license because this role only gives access to the portal for the documentation of 3 processes. This user is automatically associated with a portal viewer type license. We will now do some case studies. First, we'll log in with John Williams' account to see the accessible screens and available features. I remind you that the role associated with John is Purchasers. This role gives access only to the portal screen for 3 processes: purchase of material goods and services, supplier's registration, and goods receiving. As you can see, this user can only access the portal screen. We will click on Documentation. This user only has access to the 3 desired processes. We are going to click on the documentation of the Purchase of Material Goods and Services process. We can see the documentation. We have the possibility to download it, as well as the various attachments available. However, we cannot write comments. This corresponds to the authorizations given in the purchaser's role. We can improve this role. Back to the list of processes. It would be interesting to provide access to the process landscape that represents the company's value chain. The objective is not to give access to all the processes, but to give an overview to the user while giving him access only to the documentation of the 3 desired processes. We are going to log into Bill Evans' account to modify the purchaser's role. We go to the Users and Authorization part. We then go to the Roles tab. We can double-click on the purchaser's role to edit it. We click on Select Processes. I will give the possibility to users who have this role to consult the process landscape, My Company. So I select the desired option for this process landscape. We click on Confirm. We will log into John's account to check for this update. The process landscape is now visible in the portal. The user still has access only to the 3 selected processes. If we click for example on Administration, the system does not redirect us to the documentation of the desired process. We are now going to click on the Human Resources element. HeFlow then displays the list of affected processes, but if we click on one of them, the system does not redirect us to the documentation. The actions defined for the elements, Welcome, and Documentations work. We will now click on Supply Chain and click on Purchase of Material Goods and Services. We then access the documentation of this process. You can find the list of accessible processes by clicking on the search function. We can see the 3 processes accessible with this role. It would be interesting to have a role that allows the purchasing coordinator to write comments and make suggestions for improvements regarding the supply chain processes. We're going to come back to Bill Evans' account to create this role. We are in the Roles tab of the Users and Authorization screen and we are going to click on the plus button to create a role. The objective is to create a role complementary to the purchaser's role. We'll call it Purchaser Coordinator. We provide access only to the portal. We are going to click on Select Processes. Do we have to select options to view, download process documentation and attachments of relevant processes? No, the objective is to create a complementary role which gives the possibility of writing comments for the 3 processes concerned. We can then associate the 2 roles with a user to give him both the rights of the purchaser's role and the rights of this new role. We will select the option to allow writing comments for the 3 processes. We click on Confirm to validate the creation of this role. We return to the Users tab. For our example, we are going to edit John Williams and add this new role to him. John Williams now has two roles. We will log in with John's account and check for this update. We are going to access the documentation of the purchase of material goods and services process. John now has the ability to write comments. We will come back to Bill Evans' account. We can see cases with native roles. Phoebe Nelson has a portal-only role. She therefore only has access to the portal screen, but unlike the purchaser's role, she has access to all the documentation of the published processes. We're going to log into Phoebe Nelson's account. She has access to the process landscape. We are going to click on the search functionality. Unlike John, Phoebe can see all of the processes published to the portal in this list. We are going to click on the administration element. As you can see, she has access to the process documentation. She can download it and even write comments. Let's go back to Bill Evans' account. Now we can see another case of native role. Douglas Miller has an administrator role. He therefore has access to all screens and functions of Heflow in this environment, as is the case for Bill Evans. We're going to log into Douglas Miller's account. He has the possibility of accessing the various screens of environment management. He can also go to the process editor and edit any process. He can also create processes. We can limit Douglas Miller's access to give him the ability to edit a list of processes, without giving him the right to access the environment management screens, nor to create processes. We're going to come back to Bill Evans' account to create this role. The objective of this new role will be to give access to the process editor but only for the processes of supply chain. We click on the plus button to create this role. We will call it Process Analyst, Supply Chain. We will give access to the portal. We can also give access to all the pages of the workspace, without giving the possibility to configure them. You will see this part in more detail in the automation training. We are not going to select the options, allow the addition of all processes, and allow create processes, because we only want to allow editing of a list of processes. We are going to click on Select Processes. In our case, it is the editor part that interests us. We want to authorize the addition, the publication, and the deactivation of the publication for the three processes of the supply chain. We will therefore select these three options for the processes concerned. We confirm the creation of this role. We will now associate this role with Douglas Miller. We no longer want him to be an administrator. We want to give him the Process Analyst, Supply Chain role. As this role gives access to the process editor, it is then mandatory to manually assign a license to this user. We're going to log into Douglas Miller's account. He no longer has access to the environment management screens. We now go to the process editor. He does not have the ability to create a new process. Indeed, there is no button, New Diagram at the bottom of this window, nor the plus button at the top right of the screen. He has access to the list of processes that we have defined. For example, he does not have access to the processes of the Human Resources category. He only has access to the processes of the Supply Chain category. We will choose one of these processes. As you can see, the user can edit the process, and can access the different tabs on the right. He can then publish or deactivate the publication of the process. On the other hand, he does not have access to the Viewing Mode icon at the top of the screen. We will come back to Bill Evans' account. Each environment has an owner. By default, the owner of the environment is the user who created it. It is not possible to remove the owner of an environment. The goal is to guarantee access to the environment for at least one administrator user. In our case, the owner of this environment is Bill Evans. It is therefore not possible to delete this user. There are cases where you might need to change the owner of an environment. One example is the departure from the company of the user who is the environment owner. You can then contact our support service and send the information of the email address for the desired new owner. We will then make this change and you can then delete the user concerned. Thank you for your attention and I hope you enjoyed the content of this training. If you have other questions or want to know more, you can access our knowledge base on the website www.heflo.com in the Learning menu and in the Help Center section. If you have any business questions, please leave your message on the contact page of our site. If you are an integrator or implementer and want to be a local Heflo partner, please also leave your message on the same contact page. If you have access to our support service, you can ask us your question on our chat tool. Goodbye and see you soon.